our tribes and ethnicities and whatsoever that might be, whatever we hold true, it didn't matter. All that mattered was that we wanted something. We wanted a particular thing. It was something that Nigerians everywhere, regardless of age or their demography, what we had, how rich we were, or it didn't matter. We all just wanted one thing. We wanted M.K.O. Abiola to be the president of Nigeria. It was a conversation we had for a very long time. Now, presidential elections were held in Nigeria on June 12, 1993. The first since 1983. Military coup ended the country's second republic. The elections were the outcome of a transitional process to civilian rule, spearheaded by the military ruler Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida. The unofficial result of the elections, though not declared by the National Electoral Commission (NEC), indicated a victory for Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola of the Social Democratic Party, the SDP, who defeated Bashir Tofa of the National Republican Convention, the NRC. The winner of the election was thus never declared, as the elections were annulled by Babangida, citing electoral irregularities. The annulment led to protests and political unrest, including the resignation of Babangida and the weak interim civilian government, and culminated in the continuation of the military rule in the country, with Sani Abacha ascending to power as the military head of state via a bloodless coup later in the year. Well, this conversation is not one that OSYB will be having with you. It is a conversation that I will be bringing in some people to speak. And I say some people because, of course, we're going to hear two sides of a particular story today on Life Unfiltered. We will be hearing from the family, from someone who is speaking for the family of late Chief M.K.O. Abiola, who was recently stated as the winner, whom recently the former military head of state of Nigeria at the time, General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, came out in a book that he wrote, and he spoke openly, citing excerpts from the book to say that Abiola actually did win this election. And that, he walked in error, he made a lot of mistakes, and he, came out to say some things. And a lot of people have started to react to this conversation and say, this is a moment too late. And a lot of people are asking questions. Well, from the side of M.K.O. Abiola, we have ABDULMUMIN Abiola joining us via a phone interview today. And of course, this conversation is being streamed live on YouTube at Super FM Lagos, so you could visit the platform to watch this as well. But then I'd like to say good morning and thanks for joining us this morning, ABDULMUMIN Abiola.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, okay, so it's a very, very interesting narrative that we're seeing right now. A lot of people, this is well over 30 years since 1993 that this thing happened. I was but a young chap at the time. I remember, us celebrating at the time when the elections were on, the build up to the elections. There were songs that we sang. It was something that I didn't even know what tribe I was at the time, if I may add. But I know that children that lived in my estate at the time, we had this joy and a build up of a lot of eagerness towards what would be a democratic rule in Nigeria. Now, for that to have been snuffed and to have been taken away from every Nigerian it had a dastardly effect. Every Nigerian was aggrieved. We talked about what could have been. But for you are the son of this person. And famously, how did you feel in that moment? What happened? And how did this change things for you as a person and for the family that you come from?
Okay, so first of all, thank you for having me, and thank you I want to say hello to all your viewers. For me, I'll say that the revelations came to me in two parts.
Okay.
The first part where he declared that M.K.O. Abiola had won the elections was the first part. But I was 8 years old when the 1993 elections were being had. Okay. I could have told him, even at that young age of 8, that Abiola had won.
Yeah.
The atmosphere was a very festive atmosphere.
Yeah.
At the point we were using this option A4, that would basically meant that there were basically only two parties. So everybody would just line up behind the party that they supported, and you just count the numbers. So even from the polling booths, polling units, you found out that people already knew, you could
what the
already
results
tell
were going
where
to
this
be.
was going.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could already tell where it was going. So that was the first part. So like I said, that was not new to me. It was basically like educational exercise. I already knew Abiola had won. I think most people in Nigeria also knew. I think the only thing that does is, for those in Nigeria who were still on the fence about who was actually victorious, and maybe what was the reason why it was annulled, because it wasn't clear exactly why they annulled it. They just said that there was some discrepancies. But whichever way, so I guess it puts that matter to rest. That's number one. The second part was actually more substantial for me, which was where he discussed having remorse, feeling remorseful for the action.
Yeah.
And even talking about if he had another opportunity, he would do something different.
Differently.
I think there's this saying where it goes, it's human to err and it's divine to forgive. After 32 years, there's so much that has happened. Matter of fact, even just the event of the annulment of the elections, triggered a chain of events, like you were alluding to earlier, where you said that it was traumatic for everybody.
Yeah.
It was like in the beginning, it was full of hope in the beginning, then uncertainty, and then just basic fear. People lost hope in the nation, and I think that was really what was most important. But so like you said, so both aspects. The first part, I already knew that, but the second part was actually what I thought was more substantial. And I think it could be like a good way for the nation to heal. We'll put that matter to rest. And how do we now actualize a country or a future of this country that is, that would not make the sacrifice be in vain. I think that is where I will focus on. So not necessarily acknowledging the past, but not dwelling on it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, forging ahead. With unity and common purpose.
Thank you very much for making that known. Of course, forging ahead, not dwelling on the negatives or the fact, because like you said, it's human to err, but then, of course, to forgive is divine. And that brings me to another line of questioning, of course, to talk about closure. Now, for your family as a whole, would you say, because for a lot of Nigerians, I took a particular excerpt in the news stories this morning, and a lot of Nigerians still seem disgruntled. Young and old people still have words like this admittance doesn't bring a lot of closure. It doesn't change the fact that Nigeria could have been somewhere else if we had that go through. If this person who gave so much to the cause of Nigeria and democracy in Nigeria, he gave so much even without the power handed over to him as president. And, famously, people are still talking about it. The fact that particular broadcast that went viral at some point, where he, on the day he was being arrested, in a phone call to famously to the BBC, he said, I was being invited for questioning. I'm just going in for a brief chat. I remember your dad saying that to the media, and for that to then become something else, that we saw that he was being incarcerated for the long time, for well over 5 years. That's a conversation that I want us to still look at. But then a lot of Nigerians seem to still have a lot of misgiving towards the entire conversation, and talking about the fact that, is this actually going to give us closure, or are we going to see that, maybe some part of the family might want to follow through with legal action and maybe ask for compensation, or because I know nothing, of course, can compensate for the loss that has come. But then, is this something that does this give an absolute closure to the family of M.K.O, Abiola?
Like I said, the thing about history is history can never. You don't finish telling history. History it's fluid. It's not fixed. I'm telling you, there's going to be more books to be written, and more. There'll be more clarity to the exact situation. You have to understand.
Yeah.
There was one part which was the annulment of the elections, but that also triggered a chain of events. The imprisonment of my father, and then subsequent assassinations. Also, my mother, Alaja Kurat Abiola, was killed in Lagos.
Yeah.
That was also, and then you have to understand, there were so many Nigerians who lost lives, in just based on coming out to protest the illegal annulment of the election. So, I don't think we're going to ever Because, like I said, it wasn't just only traumatic for the family; it was traumatic for Nigerians as well. One thing that this does is it lets people know that if somebody tries to truncate, it doesn't take away the fact that you did have that power. If we can regain that belief in ourselves, we can, we can work towards a Nigeria that is, that is in our dreams, like the Nigeria that we want to see. The bottom line, but we shouldn't understand that this is that all they're doing is like a exercise, is an educational exercise. It doesn't really affect our present. And I think the most important thing and the most beneficial thing we can do for their legacy is to, like I always say that my father was a messenger, but he also had a message.
Yeah.
And what was his message? The message was power to poverty. Some of these things are still, so the message is still enduring. And I think what we need to understand is that we are the ones who we need to work towards that Nigeria. We need to all work together towards getting us to that promised land. I for one, it's neither here, because I think what I would like to see would be a way of honoring those that believe in the democratic process. Because what we've had over the years is that we've had people come and say they want to lead us, but they don't lead. They rule us. They don't explain what they want to do. You see, leaders always take the front. They always go ahead of those, because you have to understand. My father has made it clear now that we are the ones who have the power. Apparently, not vote for himself. He expressed himself to the people, and the people, his message resonated. So what I'm suggesting is, how can we now work within ourselves to come together towards that better Nigeria, not necessarily for our generation, but for our children. And I think that will be more constructive. I always said that. I think I said this before. Not dwelling.
Yeah.
Yes, we have acknowledged this. We know that it's traumatic, and the problem about healing is not just one thing. It takes a while. Like maybe the physical wound you might not see the scar, but there's still an emotional aspect to it that will not necessarily go on but with time and when we start to see the Nigeria that we want to see, it will be a little bit more easier for us to let go. But like I said, history will never ever stop being told. So we can't keep looking back, especially when we're trying to run forward. And I think that's my approach to this.
Okay, of course, thank you very much for reiterating that. Of course, moving forward is what we need to look at right now. So let's talk about leadership in Nigeria right now that you've pointed out. Of course, we have been ruled and not exactly, getting what we want. But then, how do you think? Okay, so what happened in 1993? We saw we saw. Maybe through nationalism or federalism of some sort, we saw people really, really coming out for something. Would you say you've seen that same level of commitment to the Nigerian cause in the crop of politicians that we see coming in right now?
Okay, so you have to understand that, 1999, we get back into democracy. First of all, we had already lost a lot of capacity during the Abacha regime. So, and then it was so people were really just, fed up, and people were maybe lost hope in the future of the country. So we had lost a lot of our brains, left the country, some never to come back. But that's one aspect. But you have to understand think about leaders. Once you decide you want to lead and you make a promise, you have to fulfill those promises. That is your contract. It's like an unspoken bond between you and the people who vote for you. You fulfill. But so what happens is when you promise something and you don't fulfill the promise, you keep eroding on that belief. So that's what we have. We just have a society that doesn't just believe in the leaders anymore, because it's like, fool me once, shame on, fool me twice. You know what I mean? How many times will we get fooled before you? So after, I think people have been checking out. But the thing about democracy is it only works when you check in. You have to be present. You have to be informed. So the last elections we had in 2023, we had about 93 million people with voters cards. 23 million people voted in total. That is not necessarily checking in. You know what I mean? So I think it's one first thing is not, you can't really blame the people with voters cards, because like I said, people are not speaking to them. So you just need people who are leaders who are ready to have that conversation. When you have debate, convince. Like I said, leaders convince, they cajole, they explain. It's not a ruler mentality. And I think what we've been having over the years, we've just been having successive rulers who just dictate and, shove it down your throat. And they don't really, articulate their point of view to a point where people can actually do it. It's not that hard. You just have to be ready to have that conversation with them and, have your thoughts challenged. So I think that's the issue. What we need to do is build more leaders and less rulers.
Of course, more leaders and less rulers. I'm going to take a look at some comments that were also credited to the former military head of state at his interview, and I wanted to know if this were some information that maybe at some point in your growth you were privy to some of this information as well, because there's reports in the media as well that at a particular time, the comments credited to General Babangida says, "I asked Abiola to head the interim government, but he fell for Abacha's deceit." Of course, I know we do not want to go back and keep looking at the hurts that was done, but then comments credited to him says former military president Ibrahim Babangida said he wanted M.K.O Abiola to head an interim government after the annulment of the 1993 presidential election, but he turned it down. He said after several brainstorming sessions with various groups, he had contacted Abiola to find a way forward. And as he said, and I quote, "At one time, at one of my several meetings with Abiola, arranged this time by some traditional leaders, I offered Abiola an interim position pending when we could resolve the situation. Not surprisingly, Abiola turned down the offer." Babangida wrote in A Journey in Service, of course, the autobiography that was launched in Abuja on Thursday. Now, is this information that maybe you or members of your family are privy to? And why do you think this was the case at the time? Why do you think he turned down these opportunities or these offers, I beg your pardon for a better use of English?
Well, you see, the thing about it is everything he said is neither here nor there, as far as I'm concerned, because the bottom line here is we had an election, the people spoke with one voice, and they picked somebody. At that point, once somebody is the president, you can't now say, okay, you know what, come and be the vice president. It doesn't work that way. The people so basically, I'm sure my father would have, if you had noticed, even after my father was arrested, Honest Sonekon was the interim government.
Yeah,
what happened 3-4 months later? What happened? Abacha took over. So, it's one of those things. And the funny thing about, going to people, asking them for your trust is when they give you that trust, you can now change the terms of that agreement. The agreement was not to go and become interim to go and capitulate. The agreement was to go and change and to, fellow poverty like he put in his manifesto. That was his agreement. So I think my father was, if nothing else, just making sure his duty of care, especially because he was entrusted, with the hopes, vision, and if you even notice, the whole scenario for my father, as far as I'm concerned, was a textbook definition of what a leader should do. He was calm, he was collected, he didn't ask anybody to be violent, he didn't ask anybody to go out and fight for him. He said, no, you have trusted me already with your mandate, let me go do my part. And he did. And I think, it shows that, you don't necessarily have to be the president you don't have to be in a position to be a leader. The idea here is what is best for the majority, of the populace. And I think what we need to understand is that we have the power. Nobody can. My father always said, "Nobody saves your head in your absence." You can't save my head in my absence. I have to be present before you can do that. So anybody can say, he could have done this, he could have done that. That was not the initial agreement. And as men, and when you're talking about matters of national building, I can't go to my people and say one thing, go into a room, say another thing, come back and announce it, and I'll change my position. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't build trust between you and your constituents. And I think if you're ready to do that, how many other things would you capitulate to? The bottom line was the man won the election. And if that's the case, he became president-elect. And if that's the case, he ceased to just be my father, and he became the father of a nation. The state needs to, this is how it works. It is not just, democracy is being done across in different countries. This is not, we're not reinventing the wheel. You're not reinventing anything. For me, I think that point is neither here or there. But like I said, I'm not the expert on all these things. I am just saying my own opinion.
Okay, thank you very much, of course, for your opinions and for speaking up on this particular issue. Well, if you just tuned in to Super FM 92.7, your one family, one radio station, you're listening to Live Unfiltered, and we're having this conversation with ABDULMUMIN Abiola, the son of the late Chief M.K.O. Abiola, who was the SDP candidate and president-elect at the 1993 June 12 election that was annulled by then head of state Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, who came out recently in his memoirs to talk about what happened, and of course famously quoted to saying that he made a mistake and he wished he didn't do that and he would have done things differently. If you want to join in on the conversation, you want to do phone calls 0805 092 0927. If you want to do text messages, you can send a WhatsApp message to 0705 6900 927. These are the numbers that you could actually send WhatsApp messages to and be a part of the conversation. We'll go on a quick break right now. When we return, of course, we'll still be here to complete the other half of this conversation. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Irregularities, but then of course come 2025, well over 30 years, 32 years precisely afterwards, we see that the person at the helm of affairs at the time comes out to say, hey, I made a mistake. In a memoir that was released in an autobiography, he said, I could have done things better. That election was free and fair. Arguably the freest and fairest election in the history of Nigeria. Arguably one of the elections that an electoral and political procedure that united Nigerians in ways that we can no longer maybe talk about, because we've seen so much we've seen so much division in some of our elections. In fact, the last elections we saw so much that happened in cities like Lagos and in many parts of the south and southeast. The way people were divided because of their beliefs or their candidates of choice. But then this particular election was one that we said really gave Nigerians an insight into what the future of Nigeria could be. And I'm having this conversation with ABDULMUMIN Abiola, who is the son of Kudirat and M.K.O Abiola. He's joining us via a phone call this morning. You want to be a part of the conversation? You want to ask maybe some questions or just give your 2 cents on everything that has transpired? You could send a WhatsApp message to 0705 6900927, or you could send a message right there on our Super FM Global app. You could drop your comments right there on the Super FM Global app that you could download from the iOS or Google stores. Now, I'm rejoined right now by ABDULMUMIN Abiola, who is joining us via phone call. It's good to still have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, so now let's get into another side of this conversation. We talked about the spiral effect of this entire process, and one thing that you've made clear is that you, to a large extent, has moved on. And I'm asking, the Abiola estate, your siblings, the businesses, the political character of your family, are they going to just look at this as, oh yes, we've gotten justice because someone announced that, hey, I made a mistake, let bygones be bygone? Will there be legal proceedings? Will there be follow-up conversations on what actually happened to your mom? Famously, of course, it was a very interesting thing as well, and I'm sure this is something that you would have had to deal with for the longest time. Questions about what actually happened to Kudirat Abiola. Why has there been justice? And even in this admittance that we've heard right now, will justice be served? Will there be other proceedings saying, okay, let's pursue this in court. Let's have a conversation outside of someone just admitting. Let's see what the legal proceedings are. And what else do you think your family deserves?
Oh, wow. That's a loaded question. Okay, so, like for the issue with my mother, that's my mom. It was really sad, the way she was taken away from me at a very young age.
Okay.
It's not something difficult for me to talk about because it's been a long time now.
Yeah.
But my thoughts about that process is that, we thought we were getting justice, and then those who were accused of doing the crime basically were released. I don't know how to talk about it because it seems like I'm probably not going to ever get justice for her death. And
yeah.
It's sad. It's a sad moment. It's sad because she didn't need to have been gunned down on the streets of Lagos the way she was.
Yeah.
She was fighting for her rights, and from what we know now, she was actually in the right to fight for her husband's release. Her husband didn't need to be in jail and subsequently assassinated as well. I also know that my mom was my father's #1 supporter.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I am proud of her courage in the face of the military at that time.
Yeah.
It mustn't have been easy for her to have left her kids at home and go on try to get justice for M.K.O. So I all I would say is that I think a lot. I don't know what more to say. Most people don't remember their parents. They never even knew their parents. I don't know if I'm entitled to be. I think it's hard because I still, I would still love to be able to pick up the phone and call her and seek some advice. But
yeah,
I just think that I think that in the idea for, I think I'm just gonna for my sanity, I'll just forgive and try to move on and just try to live a life that I think she'll be proud of.
Mm-hmm.
She did leave some examples. I have older sisters, Hafsat, Katila. They had a little bit more time with her. So, so basically it raised me. So, I didn't really, maybe it would have been harder if I didn't have my siblings. I didn't have, I have six siblings from my mom, so it would have been harder if we were not that, we were not, maybe it was just me or two people. But like I said, it's a difficult conversation to have because it's an emotional one. I remember the day she was actually killed. I refused to go to school. I didn't want to go to school. I had a premonition that something was going to happen.
Yeah.
I had a feeling, I had a dream. I just had this negative feeling that Abdul, go with your mom. And I remember crying, and my mom just thought that I didn't like school. Because I wasn't doing too well in school at the time. So she just assumed that I just didn't like school. So she forced me to go. And I came back. By the time I came back home, it was already done. The Muslim culture, if she died before the sun goes down, they buried basically right away. Before I go home, she was already wrapped. I didn't even. That was the last thing. The last thing was me crying. Cause I just knew something was gonna happen.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's one of those things that you look at it and you say, like it's I don't know how you put it because for my religion it makes it easier because in our religion we believe that everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Allah is the one that decides. So I can't really, I can't. I don't know. Maybe it's because it's personal to me because it's my mom. But I think when you think of when I think about it, I don't want to dwell on it because it will just be. It can be very it can be very consuming. You can consume most of your time.
Yeah.
And that energy that I'm using on looking back, I can try to see how I can do something with her legacy. My sister has an organization, supporting young girls in in different situations. So dedicated to my mom. So trying to be constructive with the hurt. Trying to use this as like fuel to like make sure that they didn't die in vain.
Yeah.
That would have been. I think that would have been the last. That would have been just like like doing something. Like, so yeah, they're gone now. But how do we make sure that we can protect
immortalize
their legacy? So it's not like a double. So with this, so that's how I look at it. My father, on the side of my father, I at that time I was already on exile. I was already in the United States. When my father didn't even know that they had killed him until like 3 months later. I think my sister was trying to protect me from
all the information
from that shock again. Yeah.
But thank you so much for being that vulnerable and speaking about these things because I could tell that it's a really very, very tough part of your life that probably you don't even like to talk about so much. But then, of course, a part of the healing process. We appreciate that you put that much out there, and with the work that you're of your parents and follow your parents and following through on seeing to it that there is some closure for you personally, and standing for yourself and speaking for yourself is something that I really do appreciate you're putting on air right here at Super FM 92.7 been achieved. I know a lot of people who may have been students of your father, who may have worked with your father in close quarters, Abiola would have been proud of, or you think there can be more to achieve to make Nigeria better?
Democracy is not it's fluid, so you have to understand that it takes time to get to that promised land. I think what we need to is because if the participation in governance is done the way it's supposed to, like for instance, so what I'm suggesting is democracy only works when we're fully engaged.
Yeah,
that is more because
do you think maybe that is saw people come out en masse? Even in the book that was written, we saw that there were statistics of these were the people that voted, this was what the turnout was, this was what these were the number of people that voted. Do you think maybe the lack of faith in the leaders that we have today might be one of the reasons, right, as voters?
Heaven and earth, and then nothing happens. You're trying to promote this democracy. What you want to do is include. Democracy has communicate your message because, like I said, it wasn't Abiola that will fix Nigeria. It will have been Nigerian. But the leaders do just we are the ones that will fix our government. We want a democratically led government because we knew we were fed up. So I think that was the idea, and I think what we need to understand is that since Nigeria is our collective commonwealth, the only way we're going to get that democracy that we're looking for is when we're fully engaged in that process. Because you can't fool me if I know But what you don't know is easy when that's like when you're not aware. But if you're involved, you're part of the process. You're going to the meetings. You're talking to you're calling your leader. What is saying? You're telling them. They know that the guy is writing a letter. You're writing them letters saying, "Oh, this is what's happening in my community. You need the help." Not asking for handouts. The idea with this is like we need to understand that Nigeria is our commonwealth, and we need to all work together towards getting that Nigeria. So I would say that the Nigeria we have today is the Nigeria that democracy doesn't give you what you don't put in. So what you put in is what you get out. The amount of energy we put into something is the amount that we get out. If you go to the United States, how much energy they put into the economy, they put so much. Almost 150 million people are voting, 70 million one side, 80 million on the other side.
Yeah.
You can see that these people actually, and then that is what. And when you have those kind of people behind you, you won't do anything funny because you won't be able to go back home. You won't be able to go back to your local government but the way it works is that half the people that more than even half, maybe 90% of the people don't even come out to vote. So it's only me and my friends that are voting. You now have that narrow vision of who are you leading. Because politics is one thing, which is a party affair. But governance is a societal thing. Everybody inclusive, both the opposition and your party. So I think what we need to understand is we are only having this issue because one, we're not engaging the system the way we should. One, two, you can't give what you don't have. If you're not a leader, you're not a leader. People rule. We just dictate. We want to just give instructions. We don't want to explain. And democracy and real governance or real leadership is about convincing, cajoling, trying to get your point across without getting angry when they don't agree with you. We all have our own ideas of how Nigeria will be better, and we all have our ideal Nigeria in our mind. What I have to do now is try to see how we can coalesce around one holistic idea of what Nigeria should be. And it doesn't have to be my own idea. It has to be our collective idea. So from my first step, if we're trying to really do something significant with our democracy that we have today, is to address the constitutional lack that we have. The Constitution itself is undemocratic. As far as I'm concerned, it's a military document that was given to us. So
but that can be changed, can it?
We need to be. It can be changed, but we need to be deliberate. Everything we do, we have to be actually deliberate. Nothing will happen without. And Nigerian people, because of maybe past failures from leadership, we just don't want to engage. But we need to engage in that or have that conversation. I'm sure, with time, like I said, democracy is fluid. I thought America was 200 years. Look at what's happening in America today. Today, democracy is still even forming, with all the history behind it. So for me, I think that Nigeria, inshallah, in the near future, will start to we'll have that. We'll have more
ideal democratic
more belief
setting
in ourselves. And once we start believing in ourselves, we will start demanding more from our leaders.
Okay, so this message came in, says, my name is Adedeji from GRA. I want to ask Mr. Abdul, what is the relationship with his family and extended family? And we have been seeing everything you're doing on behalf of your family, and we pray God will help you to carry on the legacy that your dad, Abiola, left. Well, of course, that's a message from one of our listeners.
Well, based on that legacy issue, since I came back from the United States, I've been actively trying to protect his legacy, promote it, even some of his businesses that were targeted and damaged during the whole annulment saga, squabbles. But I'm sure if you go online, I've probably spoken on some of those issues over time. So I don't want to bring it. I don't want to keep, it's like he's spiking a dead horse. So there's no need to do that. But you can, if anybody wants to know more about the situation within the family, we can have that conversation. You can go and see on YouTube and other. But I think for me now, with this revelation particularly, I am saying that if Abiola was actually the president-elect, then he'd be he ceased to be my father and now became the father of the nation. This is now a state matter. I for one, will believe that the state organs should spring into action, not for another thing, because he would have probably been the president. He died like 5 years after he would have been sworn in. So he probably have done his first term before maybe somebody would have shot him, or he would have drank tea and died the way he did. But nobody knows. But at least he would have been president for a bit. If that's the case, then he was actually another person. So the state should protect his legacy as well as his estate. So some of these things shouldn't be for me to discuss. At a certain point, the state has the the procedures and mechanisms that they use. But for me, I think my own is to just try as much as I can to maintain and protect his legacy. In the revelation, then this is not for me to discuss. It's to be the department and government somewhere having the discussion.
Okay, so I want to ask this question. Of course, Bio from M.K.O wants to know. There are two questions here. Bio wants to know that do you have a political ambition, and are you looking to be elected in office? With how you've spoken, I think there's so much more you can give Nigerians. Is this in the books for you in the nearest future? That's Bio asking from M.K.O.
I grew up in a family. That really believed in service. My father was he would have been maybe extremely ecstatic if I became a police officer or something. He believed in, we were built, or we were even trained and encouraged to go and serve. So for me, if I was ever given any opportunity to serve my people, I'll consider it an honor and a privilege, hands down. This is not something that it is even more like it is something so precious for somebody to trust you enough to so these kind of things I won't take lightly. So I would definitely consider it an honor and a privilege. But like I said, you don't necessarily have to have a position to lead, and all of us individually are leaders in our own right. In our own right.
Okay, well, thank you very much for making out time to be with us on the show today, ABDULMUMIN, Abiola. Of course, you have been speaking to us on your stance as far as the admittance by the former military head of state in his journals, of course, talking about the fact that your dad won the 1993 presidential elections. He won free and fair in those elections, and everything that followed through on that, you being a young person and how all the spiral effects and everything that happened afterwards has led to where we are today. But then final notes on this conversation. Where do you see us going? What are your final notes to Nigerians and people who are listening and people who think, oh, maybe there should be more, maybe there should be some level of commitment and something from the government?
Okay, I say to my fellow Nigerians, I say this: the struggle for justice and democracy does not end, or did not end, with my father's death or my parents' passing. The struggle continues today. It is one that requires all of us to play our part. We must work together to build a Nigeria that the rule of law is respected, where the voices of our people are heard, and where no one is above accountability. That is the only way we will survive. We must work together to build a Nigeria where democracy is not a word but a reality. In Nigeria, where, and people understand, democracy is the surest way for all of us, for all of our words to be taken into account. So it's like everybody puts in their own idea, and then we all work together to get to that promised land.
Okay.
It is not just it's a collective move. It's a collective. It implies we have to work together.
Yes.
This will not be fixed by one man in Aso Rock. You know what I mean? It will be fixed by all of us collectively doing our individual part.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, ABDULMUMIN, for joining us on the show. It's been a pleasure talking to you since 11 a.m. and bringing us up until this time. Now, this message came in while we were speaking. It says, thank you so much for speaking the way you did. It is obvious to see that you care more about Nigeria than any grievance with any authorities here nor there. This is M.K.O from Satellite Town. Thank you so much, ABDULMUMIN, for joining us on the conversation today on Super FM.
Anytime, my brother. Anytime. And bye-bye. God bless you. Your listeners, and God bless Nigeria.
Amen. Thank you so much for making that time to be on the show today. Well, that's the size of our show today on Life Unfiltered. We have been talking to the son of 1990.